Namaskar, Swadika, good evening. My name is Aparna Patwardhan. I'm the director of the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center, Embassy of Bangkok. Welcome to the World Culture Day celebrations. The World Day for Cultural Diversity for Dialogue and Development is a United Nations sanctioned international day for the promotion of diversity issues held on 21st May every year. The World Culture Day was established as a result of the destruction of the Buddha statues of Bamiyan in Afghanistan in 2001. This day provides an opportunity for communities across the world to understand the meaning and value of cultural diversity and peaceful coexistence. On this occasion, our Cultural Center has organized 2 talks and a music performance. Before we start the program, we will share the message of the Ambassador to Thailand, Her Excellency Mrs. Suchitra.
Namaskar, Swadika. Greetings on World Culture Day. The UNESCO adopted a special declaration in 2001, basically advocating the cause of the diversity of cultures, and the UN General Assembly adopted a resolution establishing the 21st May as the World Culture Day. So I'm very happy that the Swami Vivekananda Cultural Center in Bangkok is celebrating this day appropriately with a mixture of talks as well as a musical performance. As everyone knows, there's huge richness and diversity of cultures all over the world, and understanding and appreciating different cultures helps also in furthering international peace and understanding. For example, both India and Thailand are very diverse in the various cultures that we have within our countries. It's very important to recognize and celebrate this cultural diversity. At the same time, we have several similarities as well. So today's program, I think, has a presentation and a talk on the Chola Bronzes. The Chola Bronzes are renowned all over the world, and a very, very special art form, form one of the most important sacred iconographies in India. At the same time, we have also a musical performance of the Veena by an artist based in Thailand, as well as a talk on the similarities in art and architecture by a scholar from Thailand, Dr. Chedha Tingsanchali. So I'm very happy that this program has been organized, and I wish it all success. Thank you. Dhanyavad. Kapunka.
To promote culture and its diversity as an agent of inclusion and positive change, and to celebrate culture's many forms, we have invited Dr. Chedha Tingsanchali to speak on the similarities in art and architecture in India and Thailand. Dr. Chedha is an assistant professor in the Department of Archaeology at Silpakorn University. Dr. Chedha, I invite you to speak. Kindly unmute yourself, Dr. Chedha.
Okay, can you hear me? Yeah. So can I share the slide? Okay, good. Okay, now we are going to speak about the art and architectural similarities between India and Thailand. I would like to give you the short introductions about the interrelations between these two regions from 6th to 12th centuries. And if we speak about the arrival of Indian to travel to Thailand during the ancient time, we must started from the 3rd or 4th or 5th centuries. After the developments of navigation, a large number of Indians who looks for the new lands, market expansions, and fortune-seeking travels to Southeast Asia. That is the first step. And after that, when Indians continuously traveled to Thailand, they brought some small objects, including the Buddha images and the Hindu bronze, as well as the Hindu sculptures. So that this evidence show the relations between these two regions. Small objects are easily brought along with the voyagers, possibly for the purpose of private worship, like the small Buddha image that I'm showing you in this slide. This image we found from southern Thailand, from Surat Thani province, and it's very small in size, small like this, about 10 centimeters in height. So we can say it's portable size. It belongs to group the style of Sarana school. It's made of sandstone, which is very similar to the Buddha image that you can see from Saranath in Uttar Pradesh. And it's below, you can compare this of the appearance, which is the same, like transparent robe. The board is showed, or board show the cover, and they belong to the same gesture. The right hand is in the gesture of giving boon or Varana Mudra, while the left hand holding the tip of the garments. So this is the first interactions, the evidence of interactions between India and Thailand. We found the earliest Vishnu images in Thailand also. A lot of Vishnu sculpture has been discovered in southern parts of Thailand, especially in Surat Thani province, signify the arrival of Vaishnava into Southeast Asia, and it is the earliest one in Southeast Asia, we can say. Since the sculpture styles are traced back to the 1st to the 5th centuries, can be assumed that Indian first stopped in southern Thai peninsula area before traveling further to other parts of Southeast Asia. And this is the earliest Vishnu, which is also small in size. Is about 50 centimeters in height, and the sculpture is holding club by his right hand, upper right hand, and the corns near the left hip. The dress is comparable to the Kushanas and the early Gupta style. So these are the photos of the earliest Vishnu. This is the one that we discovered from Thailand, and we can compare with the earliest Vishnu in Mathura Museum in Uttar Pradesh. So the star of Kiritamukuta, or the cylindrical crown on top, is the same as the one in Mathura Museum, with the decorative patterns on the Kiritamukuta, or the cylindrical crown, as well as the attributes that I already mentioned, that the right hands hold the club, while the left hand hold the conch shells near the hip. Now come to the Pallava influence Vishnu image in Thailand. This is the second step of Vishnu sculpture in Thailand that we found around the Gulf of Thailand, not only in the south, but also in central Thailand, as well as in the eastern Thailand. From artistic elements, the sculptures appear to similar to Pallava art of South India, that lasts from 6th to 7th centuries. The sculpture is of simple dress with ornaments, wearing the cylindrical headdress or Kirita Mukuta as already mentioned, and the long transparent dhotis are the characters of these images. This indicates that a large number of early Tamils, both Brahmins, merchants, traveled to southern Thailand during the 6th, 7th to 8th centuries. So this is the photo that compare between this one is far from Surat Thani province of southern Thailand. It is a human-sized Vishnu statue. You can notice that the statue is bigger. While if we compare to the one that we found before, the earlier time is small, but after the 6th centuries, the statues become human-sized, life-size statues. However, the style that we compare to Indian art is the same, the simple dress without ornaments, the plain cylindrical headdress, as well as the long transparent dhoti, which is the same, as well as the at the hip we have the long strip of the band, which is called Katisutra, which is also the same as the Pallava statue that we found from Mamallapuram in Tamil Nadu. Now comes to the earliest Shiva's images in Thailand. As we know, the Shaivism flourished in South India and was transmitted to Central and Southern Thailand during the 6th to 10th centuries. So we can find both the imported Shiva sculptures as well as the indigenous ones, and one of which that we can that I show you today, and Mr. Vijay Kumar would speak about this in the later part of the presentations, is the South Indian style dancing Shivas. This one is from the Nakhon Thammarat in southern Thailand. It's very similar to the South Indian bronze, and including the dancing posture as well as the surrounding flame that surround the sculptures. The one that is also interesting is the Mukhilingas from southern Thailand. This indicate the flourish of Shaivism in southern Thailand. Now come to the early Buddha images that we found in Thailand. The earliest time, both Hinduism and as well as two cults of Buddhism spread to Thailand, Mahayana Buddhism and Theravada Buddhism. The first one is from North India, the latter from South India as well as Sri Lanka. Due to Buddhism variations, Buddhist art from its period was influenced by artistic style from various styles of India. And this is the Dvaravati Buddha images from 6th to 10th century from central Thailand, and is comparable to Indian Gupta art of Saranath. However, the face looks indigenous with its difference from Indian style. If we compare both Indian and Thai Dvaravati, the smoothness and the transparence of the robe is compared to Gupta style that we found from Saranath. These Buddha images are sheltered by a Naga is another interesting part of the Buddha images that we found from Thailand. If we focus on Amaravati school of South India, it is influenced by the local snake worship cult among the South Indian people, and the image of Buddha sheltered by the serpenthood of Naga was created in order to integrate both beliefs. This is the Amaravati Buddha image from Andhra Pradesh. In Thailand, we found a large number of the Buddha sitting under the Naga hood, also in the Dvaravati, and it was inherited both by Khmer and Ayutthaya school of art in later period. Another examples of Buddha images that I'm going to give you the examples is the North Indian style Buddha images that we found in the Dvaravati art also. The North Indian narrative of Buddha's biography was widely spread and appeared in the Dvaravati art, especially the Buddha giving the first preaching, or the first sermons, composing of the sitting Buddha in pendant leg, sitting in the center, and he raised his right hand in Vitaraka Mudra, or the gesture of teaching. And he's surrounded by the first 5 disciples, or we call in Pali as Panjavagya, surrounded by the divine beings. So if we compare the one with the Dvaravati work from the Pathom here, it is very similar to the murals painting portrayed in the same scene at Ajanta Cave number 16 on the top of the slide. The Buddha sitting in the same posture, and he's surrounded by the divine beings, which is the same as the Dvaravati one. The earliest Bodhisattva image in Thailand is also comparable to Indian art. The cult of Bodhisattva or the Buddha to be is the main concept of Mahayana Buddhism. Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of mercy, is believed to be the most important savior in present age. Hence, the cult is very popular among ancient Indian and Thai alike. Avalokiteshvara sculptures found from southern Thailand. We would give you these examples. This is the early Sri Vijaya style of Avalokiteshvara. The sculptures were simply this, without ornament as per Gupta style. However, the latter styles become more decorative, jewelized features on the body, which is influenced by the Pala art, Pala schools of Eastern India. So I give you the comparisons of the mid Sri Vijaya style from southern Thailand, with it is very decorated with the diadems, necklace, the mukta hara, or the necklace of the pearls, as well as the mukta yaknyopavita, or the string of pearl that hangs along the body, that is the yaknyopavita, as well as the facial expressions which is similar to the Pala sculptures from Bihar, is now housed in Indian Museum in Kolkata. The iconography is almost the same. Unfortunately, the headgear, the hair lock of this masterpiece has been lost, so we could not find the small Buddha image on the top of the headgear is already lost. We don't know whether this is identifiable as Avalokiteshvara or not. So let's speak about the architecture. That is the last topic that I would like to give you the examples, the introductory. The wealthy architectures that influenced by Indian art is started from pre-12th centuries AD. The wealthy architectural style was highly influenced by both Buddhist and Hindu arts from India, especially from the south and the east, especially from Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, Bihar, and Bengal. These are the area that influenced to Thailand, to the Varavati period during the 6th to 10th centuries. It can be assumed that architects of ancient days expertly understood Indian art, and so that not only the structures but also the details, the minute details of architectures looks very similar to the originals one. Okay. And okay, starting. This is the photo of Khao Klang Nok Stupa. Khao Klang Nok Stupa is the biggest stupa that we found in the Varavati period. It belongs to 8th centuries at Chedha, the city of Chedha in central Thailand, and the style of the stupa resembles to Indian architecture, including the niches and the moldings of Indian style, especially the Pala art of Nalanda, which this is very similar. It's composed of that as we call in Indian art as the base, the Vedi Bhanta base, this one, and the niches style, which is very similar to the one as well as not only in Pala art but also in South Indian art. Ancient Khmer architecture that influenced by Indian art. We are going to speak another kind of architecture that we call prasada. Prasada is the multitude of structures being built by the Hindus to be the abode of God, which is different from the one that I spoke before. That is the stupa that belong to the Buddhists. This is the Hindus. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Okay. And most Hindus temples are built in brick and stone, so the superstructures are imitative tier for decorative purpose. In northeastern Thailand, at first, it was built by the ancient Khmer people who settled down in northeastern Thailand during the 6th to 10th century, and it's preserved most of the Indian characters, like the moldings and the details of the architectures. But later it's become more complicated and indigenous. You can notice the difference between two styles. This is the which we call pre-Angkorean period, that is very similar to Indian art in form of the detail of architecture, while it's become indigenous style. During the 12th century, this is the temple called Phnom Rung temples in 12th century. Is built with stone, made of stone, and now the details is different by the details and the decorations. So these are we can say this is the introductions to the relations between Indian and Thai art between 6th to 12th centuries. India and Thailand has, of course, cultural connections. This is why not only the religious influences, but also the artistic and architectural transmissions, Hindu and Buddhist images, including Vishnu, Shiva, Buddha images, are discovered throughout Thailand. These images are similar to Indian art, both styles and iconography. So I think that this seems to be the end of the presentations, and I hope that my presentations will give you the idea of the connections during the ancient time between India and Thailand. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chedha. It was a very interesting presentation. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. I think now we'll move on to Mr. Vijay Kumar's presentation. From times immemorial, culture and heritage have fallen prey to intolerance. One sees traces of destruction in India in the majority of ancient temples, which were destroyed and ruined by intolerant invaders. It is a duty of the modern world to protect the heritage of humanity from conflict and intolerance. It is also our inherent duty to protect cultural objects from damage, loot, smuggling, and theft. Our speaker today, Mr. Vijay Kumar, has been instrumental in the tracking of high-profile trafficked Indian artifacts for the past 16 years. He has also written a non-fiction book titled The Idol Thief on this aspect of his work. Sculpture and Indian temple art are Mr. Vijay Kumar's passion. He writes extensively on sculpture and art appreciation in his blog, Poetry in Stone. This effort is non-commercial and supported by volunteers. Mr. Vijay Kumar is a regular speaker and columnist for many Indian dailies. He also conducts free workshops at schools and colleges to encourage the next generation to take up an interest in our art. I invite Mr. Vijay Kumar to speak on, or rather make an introduction to Chola Bronzes. The Cholan Empire was spread across South Asia, and the art and culture that Cholan kings promoted influenced the entire region. Mr. Vijay Kumar, please present your.
Thanks a lot for this opportunity, and it was very interesting presentation that preceded it that gave me this opportunity again. So today we're going to spend about 20 minutes to 35 minutes on understanding and appreciating Chola Bronzes, which is arguably the high watermark of, I would say, world art. Understanding it to Indian art is, I would say, unfair. So what you're going to see before we enter the actual artifacts, I'd like to dedicate my work, our team's work to the unknown artists and sculptors who created these magnificent divine works, to the kings and chieftains who supported them, and of course to the people who still continue to see and enjoy them. So I salute the artists first, the artisans and their sponsors, and then to the people. The objective of today's talk is to introduce you to the magnificent world of bronzes, and before that, a little bit about the Chola Kingdom. The Chola Kingdom is predominantly around 2,200 years of, I would say, interrupted rule. We find references going back to the early 4th century, before Common Era, references to a strong federation of South Indian kings. So Cholas have 3 different phases, so we'll go and look at them. But they were predominantly around Chennai, modern day Chennai, Tanjore. That was their belt. So let's see if we can get closer to their work. So this is Chola Nadu, for example, how we call them back home. So they were headquartered out of Tanjore. The main period that we're going to see now is between 848 to 1270. So that's the period where they reached the pinnacle of bronze casting. So these were the various dynasties. For people, students of history, you could probably look at the main kings, and their art was so spectacular that they had royal patronage. So at times we tend to align the names of these kings to the styles as well. So you have a Sembian Mahadevi school or a Rajaraja school, for example. So this again is something that is very interesting, that the royal patronage actually led the artisans to explore and experiment and reach rather greatness. So what exactly is bronze casting? So bronze casting, we call it in today's name, we just call it bronzes, but then back in our head, they'll say you will like your Panchaloga, Ashtadhatu. So these are predominantly made out of wax. So traditionally, they would collect bee wax and they would be molded. So in fact, the old, we call them the Stapatis when they talk about the craft. They make these bronze wax casts so perfect that technically you're not supposed to touch the finished piece even with a chisel. So they were so experts at making these casting. So this is, for example, a modern day cast. You can see the channels and runners. So what they'll do this in wax, give it a coat of clay, allow it to harden, and then they'll fire the clay. The wax melts off, leaving a hollow clay core into which the molten metal is poured. After it solidifies, of course, you break the mold. So what it implies is each one of these molds cannot be reused. That means each of these bronzes that you're going to see in the next 20-25 minutes are individually hand cast. And that gives us a lot of vital clues in terms of our other work. But today, we're just going to see art appreciation as it is. So what you're seeing is not a metal image, it's just a wax model. So the artist's specialty is to get as close as possible to the finished piece in these wax models, and then they would coat it. So these are small bronzes, I can see, and then they would coat it with clay, and then they would fire it. So what you're going to see, I'm just creeping through. So that's how clay mold, and then it's fired, and into which the hot metal is poured, and you would probably get them out into bronze. So this, in essence, what is the lost wax method. And what I want to re-emphasize is all these are handmade. The molds cannot be reused. So technically, you can't make one mold and come up with 100 output. Each one is one-to-one. The mold is broken to reveal the metal. So having said that, how beautiful are these? That we see them as pieces of art. But in our back home, I'm using a Tamil font for this. It is called Tirumeni. Tirumeni literally translates to body of God. They were not created as objects of art. That we look at them as objects of art is incidental. They were meant, so these were ceremonial bronzes that were, we call it the movable motifs. They were taken out in procession and they used to live in their temples. The priests would take care of them as living gods. They would be woken up by singing songs in the morning. They would be ceremoniously bathed, cleaned, dried, ceremoniously fed, dressed up. There'll be festivals that come to them. Marriages would happen to these deities in the night. They would be taken to their sleeping quarters and they'll be sung to sleep. So these were literally living gods, as the case may be. So what you're going to see is Tirumeni, that we call them bronzes. Idols is all incidentally. The original creators created them to be living gods, and that's how we would like to look at them. And one of the main purposes of this talk is also to show people that there is more to Chola bronzes than just Nataraja icons. So you're going to see a lot more. Of course, I will show you Nataraja bronzes, but you're going to see a lot more bronzes apart from Nataraja. So that's what I would like to start with, to say that this is divinity, and what you're seeing is an 800-year-old bronze that is still smiling at you. That's been cast, and that's the hand of a sculptor who made this divine smile come to life, because he found that this has to be the smile of God. And this is the essence of it. They are not objects of art. They are living gods, and they were destined to grace their abodes. So we looked at in terms of how do we look at these bronzes and be enamored. This is how a priest or a local community would like to look at bronzes. They would look at bronzes as a living god. The moment you see this, you don't look at it as an object of art. This is how the local communities look at them. So the pinnacle of artistic excellence is, of course, the uplifted feet of Nataraja. So I'm going to take you through how to look at a bronze. We all look at bronzes. Maybe a lot of you can see bronzes in museums, but if you do get a chance to see bronzes in temples, you look at bronzes in the round. And I'm going to show you the most important bronze that's often neglected is the Ashtadeva. And this was the first bronze that was cast. Even before the main deities were cast, this bronze would be cast. It's form of a trident, but this was the first. Even before a temple was built, this bronze would be cast, and all donations to the temple would be in his name. And even today, if you go to temples, the first bronze that comes out in any procession will be an Ashtadeva. And inside the Ashtadeva, there will be different deities. So what you will see here, for example, there is the Rishabhantik Ardhanari. So Shiva as Androdine. You have the Parvati on his left, Shiva on the right, and leaning on the Nandi inside the Trishul. This is a classic Ashtadeva, and these are small. These will be this big, about 3 to 4 feet. But how do you look at them is to see them in the round, to see the brilliancy of the cast. Imagine all this was done in wax before, prior hand, and then cast and poured. And that's why bronzes have to be seen in the round. And now from a small bronze, we go into seeing how the sculptors basically express themselves in bronze. And you can see here, of course, we look at a motion that is being created. You can see actually the dress flare up, the classic tribangas which you're going to go. So any bronze that we look at, we're supposed to look at it in the round as you walk around, and you can see the grace, the sinuous grace that comes along with it can only be seen when you go around a bronze. And of course, I'm going to take you around this brilliant Nataraja and to show you that it is not a two-dimensional crafting. And you can actually see the leg is not just up like this. The leg is actually on the way up. So you can actually see, if you go down closer, the flexion, the muscles, the kneecap, the ankles, the bell on his, all these are something that you look and be it's something that you have to experience and imagine the craft and guile of the sculptor. He should know anatomy. He should know how a feet should be, how a toe should be, the proportions. In fact, how did they measure these proportions? They used to have like a palm leaf in the form of a swirling tape. So each of them, they would use a swirl tape. So it's a prerequisite of modern coiled measuring tape. And if you actually see the toe, as you're bringing up your toe in dance, the thumb actually stands up and guides it. So you can actually see the thumb in a slight amount of flexion. So this is how you would look at, and the thigh. So the right leg that is anchored is taking all the weight, and the left leg is coming up. All these are studies in anatomy by itself, and this is something that you should actually look at it. And as you go around the bronze, you can actually see his dhoti has been tucked in the back, and there's a small, we call it the pin kosun. A tuft of cloth is just kept there. So such detail people can take you around, and you can actually see because he is dancing in the round. So if you just try to move your shoulder like this, for you to make a turn, you have to move your left shoulder blade out. So that is what you can see there. The right shoulder blade is up and the left shoulder blade is coming in. So that extent the sculptors had to study, and the grace. It's not just abaya there. You can actually see how it is, and there is a certain resting appeal and a tender, somebody saying, "Don't worry, I'll take care." And that is implied, and that is what we are going to see. The ornamentation, it's a study by itself. How they wore the rings, all these are studies by itself in terms of ornamentation. How he holds his various attributes, something that we will learn to go. So this is just an introduction to how you would just have to view a bronze. What all do you look at it? The third eye, the crescent moon, the datura far, the skull on his. All these are by itself. The mismatched earrings. On the left ear, he is wearing a palm leaf that's been worn. It's called a patrakundla. On the other side, he is holding a makara motif, the makara kundla. All these are essences in studies. Of course, we go to Devi, And there again, you can see how she's standing up. The sinuous grace. She's just standing there with why is the left leg up? Why is the right leg back? All these, we look at it, all these are created for a particular purpose. We will see that when we come to the essence of flexion. And here we see one of an amazing bronze. Unfortunately, it's been trafficked. We're working to bring it back to India. But if you really look at the way he is standing, and you can see the flexion, which we'll go into the different modes later. And it was not just gods. We're going to see a lot of divine men. So this is one of the sacred alvars, so the saints of Shiva. But here, he is a young boy that he's has there, Samanda. And you actually see him, basically he was fed. When he was a young boy, he cried for milk because his mother was not there. His father left him on a temple door. And as he was there, he was fed milk by Parvati. And his father comes back and looks at a small milk mark here and says, "Who fed you?" And he's showing that who fed. He points to the temple tower. Now, having said this, if you see the bronze, how it is cast, you can see the finger. It is in the act of pointing up. So on the left hand, it signified what he is holding as a cup and the bow, and the detailing that's gone into making the swirls of the hair. As a young boy, how much can you, and the fingers, the nails, it's something that can, you can keep going on. Somebody who's delicately holding a cup. This is something that that's the first portion of an introduction to just looking at how to look at Chola bronze and what do you observe. So these are some pointers. These are not hard and fast rules. Normally, gods are shown with multiple hands. Humans or saints or humanized avatars are shown with two hands. So whenever you see multiple hands, it's a clue that it's a god. So here you see Vishnu. Of course, he's standing with four hands. He's got the Shankha and the discus, and the two other hands. So on the right is Rama. So here, because Rama is a humanized avatar, he's shown with two hands. So these are pointers, and then there are again exceptions. Here you see Shiva as Tripura Vijaya or Triprantaka, as a destroyer of the three cities. He's shown with both four-handed and two-handed. So there are exceptions that you would need to look at. But again, there are clues and pointers to who that he's God, he's not a human. There's a snake there, he's holding a bow. So we'll come to that. Now, so whenever you see a god accompanied by consorts, the god is shown, the main god, of course, here is Vishnu, is shown with four hands. The accompanying Devis are shown with two hands, but this is actually a wrong depiction in a museum. They have actually interchanged the Devis. Normally, how should the Devis be? They should, the hand closest to the Lord should hold the flower. So here you see they have interchanged the two Devis and wrongly photographed. So the positioning is, this is the right position. So whenever you have three of them, the Lord with consorts, the hand away from the Lord is held down, and the hand that is closest to him holds. Sometimes it is shown with the flower, sometimes it's just symbolical showing. So these are just canons that you go through. So here you see one of the most brilliant masterpieces of Chola art. It's in the Tanjore Palace Museum. Shiva's royal marriage with Uma, Vishnu presiding over it, and Lakshmi giving her off. And you actually see the coyness or the shyness in Parvati's face as Shiva is holding her hand for the first time. And so there are multiple such depictions. Here again is Skanda with his wife, and you can actually see them. This is Adhikara Nandi with his wife Surusa. So most of them you will actually see the depiction has God is four-handed, the consort is shown with two-handed. So this is Soma Skanda depiction. Again, Shiva, Parvati, and Skanda, the family. And here it's a human avatar. So here it is Krishna with Rukmani and Balaram and Gauda. So you can actually see when it becomes human avatar, it becomes two-handed. So you can see these are all saints. So these are the Alvar saints, and they are always shown with consorts. If they have two consorts, all of them are shown with two hands. So you never get to see them with multiple hands. Again, while we are on the topic of hands, one of the main points of identification is attributes. So in Chola bronzes, Shiva, of course, is always shown with an axe and a deer that he holds up. So you will see him with an axe in his right, a maru as it's called in Tamil, and a man. So Shiva is shown with this. Vishnu, of course, is shown with conch and discus. This is Vishnu Durga, the feminine aspect of Vishnu, and here again she is shown with attributes of Vishnu because she is Vishnu Durga. This is Brahma. Obviously, you can actually see the Kamandalu. He'll have a rosary on the other hand. The attributes are something that we normally have to take keen interest in. Here we have Ganesha with Ankusa and Apasa. Ganesha is also sometimes shown with a Vajra as well. So there are some exceptions that we have. Like here, Ganesha is shown with a aspect because he is son of Shiva. He is shown with a battle axe. Muruga, now Skanda, is normally shown with a Vajra and the Thunderbolt weapon, with an exception here. This is in the famous Gangekonda Cholapuram temple of Rajendra, son of Rajaraja. Here is shown with a small rooster in his left hand and a shield in his lower left hand. So there are multiple such options that always come up. Here you see Surya is already shown with flowers in his two hands. We go back to the saints. Each saints had different ones. In olden days, I think even then temples were not properly upkept. So Upper, who was one of our Devaram trio, was used to use this particular instrument to clean temples. So this was called a Uravaram. So whenever you see Uravaram in his hands, he's Upper. We'll go into the hand poses later. Of course, we're talking about influences of South Indian influence in Southeast Asia. She is the first and earliest of the Alvars, Karekala Mayar. And we see her as Pei Ammai almost everywhere in Southeast Asia, across Vietnam, in Cambodia, even in Thailand, you see her influence. She is shown with symbols. So she's going into raptures looking at, so the Lord actually danced for her. She wanted to see Shiva's dance, and usually she's shown with that. And this is a very one or more saint of which is normally shown as an accountant of Shiva. Sandikeshwara is shown with an axe. It's a very interesting story. Manikavasaka, again another brilliant composer of hymns for Shiva, is shown with a palm leaf in his left hand. So that's for the identification of the attributes. We just go into the standing types just to give you an introduction about flexion. We're going to see how do we distinguish the different standing types. And again, these are not more ceremonial. I would say that it's more stylistic. So how do we do that? We just count the bends. So I'm just going to assess these, let's say, plumb lines to help us. So you have 1, 2, 3, and 4. So let's see, 0 flexion, 1 bend, 2 bends, and 3 bends. And what are these? So 0 flexion is Samabhanga, 1 bend is Abhanga, 2 bends is Adibhanga, and of course the most popular triple flexion as Tribhanga. So you cannot go wrong with this. Most of it you will see either in Samabhanga or in Tribhanga. Let's see what it does to flexion. So this is from classic Greek aspects. You see this is Samabhanga. So standing straight, it gives you a frozen look. Now when you go down into a little bit of flexion, and you can see what happens. The sculpture actually comes to life. Of course, these are very, very famous sculptures. The Venus de Milo, all of them basically work on getting the body contoured. And when you do that, the left leg actually comes up a step. So all this is basically called contraposta that we do with triple flexion. In Indian art, we call it Tribhanga. The moment we have Tribhanga in form, it gives you, let's see how, so you can actually see how the plumb lines work. So the triple flexion concepts coming in. In terms of, we looked at standing, now we look at the seated poses. We have Sukasana, Padmasana, and Lalita. So each of these are characteristics of each individual deities. These are examples. So Sukasana, normally you will see Shiva seated, one leg down. This is rushing through for time. Padmasana is usually Brahma is shown in this form. Ganesha seems to be a favorite for this, Lalita, wherein Ganesha is shown as a typically like a dwarf. So his hands and legs are dwarf. You can actually see the postures coming out to that. Then the more common form I would say that we share with the Buddhist pantheons are the Leelas, Maharaja Leelasana and the Utkuriyasana, which we will see in a while. So we're just putting in some Buddhist examples where you can see the Leelasana. Dakshinamurti form of Shiva as Guru, as a teacher, you'll always see it in Virasana. And this is a famous Buddhist form from the Sri Lankan pantheon in the Colombo Museum. where you can actually see it's almost like he is alive, Utpuriyasana, a similar form that we can see with the Nisumba Sudhini in the Madras Museum. You can actually see the form, how it brings life into the sculpture. There are, of course, Yogasana, Swatik, and Garudasana, which is very usually depicted. So Narasimha is depicted in Yogasana, Swastik, and Garudasana is formally for Garuda, as the name suggests. We just quickly rush into hand poses. So each bronze, when we go and look at it, each of them are important. What it does. So for example, the way they're holding attributes in Katari, Abhaya is don't fear. So Simhakarana is almost like calling you for attention. So we have a lot of these postures that come up, which is interesting for study. Each of it is a lesson that students interested in art iconography should get into. So I'll just skip to ornamentation. So there are different forms of crowns that we're going to see today. The Kirita Makuta, which the doctor explained about. Normally, Vishnu is shown with this. All the consorts have Karanda Makuta, and it is quite elaborate. And the stylistic depictions, again, are different in terms of, so the artist basically experimented with these canons. So this is a Jata Mandala of Manikavasaka, for example, here of the same. And here you have a very interesting depiction of the Sudarmudi. It's almost like in fire. This is Bhairava, the terrific aspect of Shiva that you see here. And this is a very unique, probably the only depiction of in bronze. Of course, you have it in the Dharmajarata, the Sarpa Kundala of Sarpa Mauli of Shiva that is in the Tanjore Museum. It is such a beautiful depiction that, of course, you have to visit. Then we come down to the Viri Sadai of the Lord dancing. So you imagine him dancing with the hairs playing and he goes around. And quite unique, this is another depiction of Kalyana Sundara of Shiva and Parvati's marriage. But here he seems to be much younger. And she's wearing a very elaborate headdress. And this particular headdress is called Tamiram Konde. So this beautiful headdress or knot that she's wearing itself is called the Tamiram Konde. So there are a lot more ornaments that would require a much larger connection. But I'd like in this context to highlight that a lot of these bronzes were under threat during the early 14th century, and there was an invasion in South India. A lot of these bronzes were buried for safety because they were melted or broken. And even today, we receive a lot of these buried hoards that do come up. And what you're seeing is a one-sided buried Nataraja that was excavated last year. So you can actually see it's been buried for almost 600 years. The ancients took so much care to take care of their gods. But then, just one wash, and he's already come back to worship. You can actually see the locals are already praying. They've already kept the flowers. So this is his role. Heritage and culture lives, and that is the reason why they were buried. It was a supreme sacrifice of our ancients to preserve their gods, and it's, I feel, our duty to take care of them in whatever form or way. And I think I've run out of my time for now, but if given another opportunity, I'm sure I will discuss the final aspects of Chola Bronzes and identifying them in more detail. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vijay. It was really very informative. I had a question on this. You did mention that one of those bronzes that you showed is also seen in Thailand. Are there quite a variety of these, Cholan influence bronzes available in Thailand? Because I'm talking from Thailand, I just wanted to know if.
I would say that influences were there. These bronzes were specifically cast for a temple, and all these were heavy. So what you're looking at they would require about at least 10 people to lift them. So they were not really portable antiquities, as you would call them. But I would say I'm very interested in one of the images that the doctor had shown of a Sri Vijayan early Bodhisattva. It actually had a Krishna Jina, or the black deer Yagnopavita, which is very, very Guptan influence. We find it in, for example, in the famous Devgarh temple, one more in the museum in Bombay, and one in the British Museum, Victor and Albert Museum. We don't see the Krishna Jina Yagnopavita that much in South India. So I would say that there is still a lot more to study, a lot more effort to be done in terms of the parallels. But in terms of the Chola Bronzes, I would say that we've not even looked at the Buddhist and the Jain parallels. Of course, I think we can do another session where we can talk about how the images, but I think today's session was to just introduce people to the amazing world of appreciating a bronze. I think a lot of people just walk past museums without even casting a second glance. I hope with this 25 minutes, people would step and in fact, when I was first introduced to Chola Bronzes, I vlogged, I said, he came to life, I became metal. So I would like to say that, yes, it's quite an interesting but addictive passion.
Dr. Ched, do you have any questions? If you want to engage in a discussion, please go ahead. You're muted, Dr. Ched.
Doctor, you're muted.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah, good.
Yes.
So thank you for the yes. So thank you for the informative presentations about Chola Bronze. I miss India. I also appreciate the Chola Bronze. I traveled to Chennai and Tanjavur to see some bronzes, and it is very interesting that many South Indian art and architecture has traveled to Thailand, especially in southern Thailand, because it's actually in a different Gulf. It's share the same Gulf of the Gulf of Bengal. So I think that Tamil people travel directly to southern Thailand to avoid the sea route. And we found some inscriptions in Tamil in Phang province of southern Thailand mention the establishment of the Tamil village in southern Thailand. As well as we discover one statue that I didn't show you today. It is the statues that made by Indians. Yeah, in late Pallava style. It's similar to the one that we found from Vaikunta Perumal in Kanchipuram. It's very similar. Yeah. So thank you for sharing. Yes. So maybe after COVID pandemic, you can come to Thailand and we can discuss more. Yeah. Thank you.
Sure. Likewise, I hope you can also come and we can see Indian art through your eyes as well.
Yes.
We have learned a lot today from both the talks. It's been truly a celebration of the rich culture in the subcontinent. Thank you, Mr. Vijay Kumar and Dr. Chedha Tingsanchali, for two very valuable talks and an informative discussion as well. In a few minutes from now, we are presenting a music performance by Ms. Parinita Tangirala, Veena artist residing in Bangkok. Today at 7 p.m., ICCR Delhi is organizing the annual Pandit Deen Dayal Upadhyay Memorial Interpretation by Dr. Colleen Taylor, Sen on Insights into India's Culinary Traditions. We shall share the program on our social media handles, so please remain tuned to our Facebook page. I thank our social media audience for watching this webinar. I once again thank Dr. Chedha and Mr. Vijay Kumar for a very fascinating, two fascinating talks. Thank you. Namaskar, Swadika. Thank you.